So let's get into this conversation. Today we want to talk about childhood trauma. Wanjiru, there are many questions because I've been asking, what is childhood trauma? Because I only hear of childhood trauma. I don't hear about old age trauma anyway. Janu, start us off with the day's quotes.
The day's quote today is, the most powerful weapon any woman can wield is her story, because it cannot be taken away from her. That was said by Michere Mugo back in 1994. The most powerful weapon any woman can wield is her story, because it cannot be taken away from her. Sure you agree?
100%.
100%.
I related to it.
Yeah.
I think the quote is just self-explanatory in its own. As someone I've admired since I was a kid, Janet, and you as well.
Since she was a kid, Janet.
I didn't mean that in a bad way. I didn't mean that in a bad way.
I'll take it. As recently as yesterday, I met you when I was in primary. I just say thank you, Wanjiru. But no, go ahead.
But black don't crack, because she's still...
You're right, right?
Impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but like I think that as we have this conversation and the personal lived experience I've gone through, I think that's what's gotten me here. Being able to own my story and my own experiences is the most powerful thing we can do. Not just as women, I think men involved in the conversation as well is really, really vital. So I think I would change the quote to everyone should own their story. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to start there, Wanjiru, if it's okay, which is, you know, if you're open to talking about it, is just that moment that made you realize the thing that birthed Clear Minds, Better Lives started with your own story.
Yes.
What was that?
My own story. Take it back to, obviously it's a full gap of things, but I think surviving suicide attempts multiple times led me there. But 2019, we're at a Burna Boy concert, and I had lost a friend to suicide a year before that. So I grew up in the States, just for background context. So at this concert, it's like 8 of my friends. We've gone to watch Burna Boy. Then we get calls. 2 people in different states have tried to take their lives. And these are Kenyan Americans, right? Young Kenyan Americans. And so when I went back home, I was really bothered, because the constant reception if people died by suicide or they attempted suicide with, they're a bad kid, they're confused, you know, all the taboo things that we use in the language, right? So I get my friends together, my sister is involved, and I'm like, we need to do an event to create awareness for mental health. Now, I had gone to therapy 2 years prior. I'd started therapy. I was very interested in growth and finding out why I would get minor depression, why did I want to die. So things like that really keyed my interest. So with that, we sat down on a Saturday and we're looking up names, and CMBL was meant just to be an event. This is 2019. We don't know that COVID's coming. So we do everything. We fundraise like $10,000 in a week, and we're like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, we can do this. And we just did it for the event. But then we ended up hosting something called Snap 254. It's a huge platform for Kenyans globally. And the need was so great. Everyone was like, you need to talk about this. We need to do this. So we're excited to do the event. I was looking at doing my master's in either counseling or global mental. I really didn't know. So I ended up going to King's College during the pandemic. And so CMBL was birthed out of me wanting to change the perception of our community in the States at the time, right? Because I grew up there. But then when I moved to London, I was like, wow, it's deeper than I thought. Then I would come to Kenya and have all these conversations, because I go to primary schools and talk to young girls. And it was the same thing. It was a global conscious conversation that was like, people would talk to me, but silently they wouldn't talk to people in their homes or their community. So it really like made me want to create a space where people felt safe. And I focused more on education, because my thing is like, as kids, we were taught so many things. That's how we learn to live the world, right? So for me, it was unlearning, relearning, and then learning all over again. For people in our community, including my parents, from my parents to my older cousins to my peers to people who are now younger than me. So that's how it came about. So it's off also being the kid who was seen as the odd one out, you know, because I'm a pastor's kid. And, you know, that comes with a lot of scrutiny, just because, you know, they see your dad as the perfect one on the pulpit.
And you're an extension of him.
Yeah, and I'm not. I always denied it. I was like, I'm not my father. So then I had, you know how it is growing up in Kenya. I had a lot of guy friends. I just gravitated toward guys, but I was with my dad all the time. That's part of how you grow up. Like, your caregivers are a huge influence in your life. So for me, and then I realized the suicides were coming because of identity crisis, you know? born in Kenya, raised in the States. I'm living in London. You have a mixture of, I call myself a third culture kid because I have multiple identities. But also when you grow up being told, you go to school, you work hard, you get a good job, you get married, get kids. That cycle is false, right? It's such a false. I'm 33. I just got married this year. The expectation was at 25. Yeah, I'd be married and having kids, and I'm like, it doesn't
25,
work like
get
that.
married. 27, you have the babies. Buy the house at 28.
Yes.
And and it's dangerous when something disrupts.
Who plants this though? Does it come from elsewhere, or does it also come from your own? As you're thinking about your life. A teenager looks at a 25-year-old as a very old person.
That's true.
So when somebody who is 30, that's now I'm 30. I should be having a house. I should have children. I should be at that stage until you get closer to it and you realize.
What forms the internal pressure is the external pressure. When we're little kids from a very young age, because I grew up in Kenya for most of my childhood. I want to say early childhood. Yes. You're told when you go to school and get good grades, that whole thing is instilled in you. That's why you have, when I was a 5-year-old, I used to want 3 kids, like, oh my God, like the princess wedding, because you think that that's what life is. And you look at adults like, wow, there's all this freedom that they have. But there's no sort of conversation of the reality to get there.
Sure.
So I think you start internalizing it as a teenager and as an adult because already it's been planted in you as a kid. And it's not just in our homes, even in school. When used to, girls and boys are separated, you can't be friends until you're at a certain age to be together. There's so many things that our culture, our schools, our homes, and it's not laying blame on anyone. It's been generational. It's been passed down to us. So if my parents' passed it down, my parents didn't know any better. That's just the formula, because also we know, your parents, right? So I'm sure that's hard to sort of like unlearn what you were taught to be able to create a better, healthier mentally, child. Yeah.
There's a lot to get into.
One of my children wants to be a husband, by the way. He's 7, but the other one doesn't want to.
Okay.
And I'm like, we can figure it out over time. He's like, no, but I really want to. I'm like, we can figure it out. Take it slow. You wanted to mention.
I wanted to ask, so we're off the blocks on the right note, the definitions.
Okay.
What is childhood trauma?
Okay. So I want you to sort of dissolve anything you think about trauma, because what has happened with the word lately, it's very oversaturated and overused. So trauma is not me
almost
hitting you and then I'm traumatic. Okay, there's a really good psychologist that I love. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate, and I've read his books multiple times, and he's an amazing psychologist. So trauma is what happens to you and then ends up living in you. I don't know if you've heard of the book, Trauma Lives in the Body. The body keeps score, sorry. So trauma lives in the body. So what happens is, in childhood, so 0 to 6 are the most vital years of your life. Leave adulthood. 0 to 6, the most vital years of your life. Why? Because you're watching how your parents love you. You're seeing what is happening around you. Take a baby who's maybe 8 months, right? Let me use an example that makes it a bit clear. And let's assume this is an abusive home. So what happens is, as you think that the child is not hearing, the brain is so delicate. So the brain is picking up everything at this point. So the brain knows what abuse is, but it's not until maybe you're a teenager or an adult that you start formulating that abuse. So what happens is, you may not remember the physical part of it, but your brain already instilled what it was seeing and feeling and hearing from your parents as they fought or beat each other. So what happens? Sometimes that child becomes an abuser. Some child, that person has toxic traits. That person doesn't know how to have good communication skills. That's how it affects us in adulthood. Now, if I take it to a personal level, for me, do you guys know what attachment styles are? Yes, you do.
I don't.
Okay. So an attachment style is something that gives you context in how your caregiver affected you, right? So therefore, attachers, right? I'm an anxious, preoccupied attacher, but I work on being secure all the time. So secure is when your attachment styles don't affect sort of like, let me say the toxic traits, So there's avoidance, which most African men, actually most men are avoidant. Then there's a disorganized attacher who's a fearful avoidant, and they're also an anxious attacher. So it's the two. So when you look at yourself as myself, as a kid, I'm an anxious attacher because for me, anything that rings that we're not okay, like, and I'll say this for relationships, it rings danger, danger, danger. Things are not going to go okay. And that's because in my early years,
this thing is over.
Yes. Because in my early years, there was a lot of emotional neglect. And that emotional neglect, like, my dad first told me he loved me at 27 years old. So my inner child, the anxious, it's like, what is happening? This is new to me. This is foreign. This is not safe. Because my safety was, you don't talk about anything. So what did I do? I'm an outspoken person just because I was raised like as an extrovert, because I'm a PK's kid. So I would find safety in other people to talk to. But it doesn't mean that I should have had safety at home. And that's, again, it's not a blame on my parents. They didn't know any better, and they were raised that way. Now we talk about avoidance. They were neglected emotionally, but they were never seen. It's like, yeah, you just avoid. They were like, hey, I'm feeling this way, mom. No, you're not. And that's been our culture. It's not just, and I also want to debunk this idea that it's a Western thing, because before all this came up, still the Western culture used to do this back in the day, in the 1800s, in the early 1900s. Emotional expression wasn't a thing. So childhood trauma stays within you as a child, and in adulthood, it comes out as very toxic traits, which all of us own. We just have to unlearn, relearn, and keep being better. Yeah.
We were discussing this just at the beginning of the show. Is it possible to not have childhood trauma? And this isn't to say like the perfect childhood. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that is. But yeah, is it possible to not have any childhood trauma? And what's the qualification for trauma?
Trauma, is it just life?
Yeah. Exactly. And that is why I'm saying we use trauma as a word to scare people. Trauma is just issues. Like, all of us have issues. True. Like, there's no way you can tell me that you found everything in childhood. With childhood trauma mostly, because I think for people it looks like abuse. It looks like a car accident. It looks like this big thing that happened. And sometimes, you get injured in a car accident. The physical part of it ends, right? But when you're in a car sometimes and you almost get hit, that rush that you feel, that's what trauma is, because it's still in your body. So what do you do in situations like that? You have to work to healing. And part of that is, like going to therapy, having a safe space to open up to. I also think, I know that this is something one of your producers asked me to mention, is how do you get to a healing space, especially in a community that's very stigmatized like our country? One of the things I say is governments are number one. They're the ones who provide schools. They're the ones who provide all the learnings that you can have. We're a faith-based nation, right?
Allegedly.
Yes. Right?
I'm saying allegedly
for
because
those,
we don't act like it.
We have faith. Practicing it is different.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We are faith-based.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is we have spiritual leaders, right?
Yeah.
They have a huge responsibility. Like, my dad was a reverend, and he was a huge reverend at PCA. But then my dad went to the States, and now he's like a psychologist in theology and stuff. So I've seen him over time really unlearn and now approach his teachings in a very psychological, theological way. So spiritual leaders, because most, even in rural areas, in shags, who do they listen to more? The pastor. They're not going to listen to anyone. So there's so much work to be done in our country specifically, and globally as well, but who I really cater to is a Kenyan community and the diaspora Kenyan community, because I want to see a generation coming up where it's about healing, and we're raising our kids to be better human beings. I think we were raised to just be good at our careers, be good wives, whatever that means at the time, be good husbands. Like, there was no thought of like, you have to communicate this way with your partner. You have to communicate this way with your child. You have to communicate like this with your friends.
Right. Even there was no talk of how to be good to yourself.
Exactly.
All of this is how you relate to other people.
Yeah.
So there's nothing about how you relate to yourself.
How to make everyone around you happy. And you. And then this inner child healing, it's people can see it as a social media trend.
Yes.
But how do you separate? Because people are really saying, my inner child is healing.
Yeah.
And then some people are dismissing it as, you're just jumping on trends. What does it really mean when an inner child is healing? And how do we not invalidate that Just talk to people who are invalidating, because a lot of people are invalidating that in there. Like, what are you saying, your inner child? What does it mean, and how do we not invalidate it?
I want to thank you for that question, because I really think it's an important one. I think what I've seen with social media especially, and I will say in my observation, and people may disagree or agree with me, is that a lot of people go with a trend in our country and society. The first time I came to Kenya was when I was 18. We moved back, and it's December. And I'm only trying to make a point of how trends go in Kenya. It's December, so me, I'm in shorts, whatever. I'm seeing people in boots, Ugg boots. It's December in Kenya. It's so, these scarves, like, I'm just like, oh. So I feel like sometimes everyone sees something, they take on with it without doing the work. Like, it's winter, it's December, it's winter, I get it, but it's Kenya, I'm supposed to enjoy the weather.
It's same winter elsewhere, it's not winter here. Yeah.
So I'm always like, I didn't understand it until I came to Kenya over and over again, and I was like, this is what happens. People just go with the flow without really understanding what's going on, even where they're trying to copy this trend. Because in the States, we dress by seasons. We don't dress by
trend.
Exactly. So I think it's the same thing here. I think what I've seen is a lot of people getting on the bandwagon of like, well, it's mental health, it's a trend, so let me talk about it, without really doing the work. I personally know that to understand your inner child, you've got to do self-work.
Yeah.
You've got to do not therapy is for everyone, right? So there are these online tools you can use to go study and stuff like that. So to get to healing to your inner child, I think you have to really self-reflect. Like Bashar is saying, you have to really do the inner work to understand what is your inner child. Like, there's no way I would have been able to understand. I'm an anxious person, even when people break up with me or when friends do certain things. I would never have understood that my reactions are being caused by what happened to me as a kid and how I was taken care of. But I had to learn that. A therapist had to walk me down that path. So to heal your inner child requires a lot of work, and it requires you to also be open to change. A lot of that is you changing yourself. They say it takes 21 days to change a habit, but it takes a lot of work to want to change any habit. The problem with saying that I have an inner child and then you don't know anything, then you're going around spreading misinformation, which is a huge thing on social media, right?
Sorry to interrupt you, but a big part of, this is me coming to terms with what happened in my childhood, what traumas may have been there, what good things may have been there, requires memory. And then there's repressed memories, which is a coping mechanism that we don't even know we have. So what happens in that case? Because I know for sure there's some things that are just
blacked out,
buried in there, blacked out. And it's like, so do I want to retrieve those in the first place, or can I just cruise?
So nothing.
Or maybe they manifest.
Yes, unknowingly.
Right. That's what I was about to say. Yep. So nothing is ever repressed. We consciously repress, but the brain never represses. The brain is so good that whatever you think you've repressed, it manifests, his word. It comes out in different habits. Like, there are people who may not remember that, their parents were abused, like the example that I used earlier, because they're an infant toddler, right? But then they become they have this traits of almost an abuser, or even when they're in an abusive relationship, they're so silent. Things like that. That's what comes out. Now, what can help with that? Therapy is a good tool to use. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Therapy is not, I go to a session with a therapist and they fix me. Like, a therapist will never do that. A therapist prompts you to constantly think about your actions. So what happens? The brain becomes, you open up your brain to now opening new memories for you. And I think I've done that. I've done the talk therapy. I've done something called EMDR, which is now where you go deep into remembering your.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Oh, EMDR.
Yes.
Okay,
What's
happening here?
Are you going deep
Janet,
into what?
do you want to explain?
No. You explain.
No, please do after the break. But you're going deep into what?
Sorry, Latif and I were the kids who are behind in class.
No.
Just a little bit, but we're catching up.
Not even. Some of this just came to my attention a few months ago. Wanjiru Karanja-Mutiso and Ian, your husband, has commented on YouTube. He's saying, my wife is she's so dedicated to helping people. I hope today's conversation will help someone.
We hope so.
We hope
you,
so.
Hubs.
She's the founder of Clear Minds, Better Lives. She's talking about debunking childhood trauma. I can see even the Kikombe has commented. We'll come and sample some of your feedback after the break. Coming up to 7:30, we'll come back with this conversation.
100.
You're right. Mario Namesema. I'm so excited to see myself on WhatsApp Nation.
Hey.
My favorite morning show. Good job, Eric, Mariam, Janet. We're fixing this nation together. Happy Mazingira Day. Right back at you.
Happy Mazingira Day, Mariam.
The Kikombe. Wherever you go in Kenya, the society just oozes of unhealed plethora of childhood trauma.
Oh my God.
From church, school, serikal, even police. Which makes me wonder, he goes on to say, what traditional African forms of community healing existed? Also, how can they possibly be integrated into modern therapy or healing? It's a fantastic question.
That's a great question.
Caroline Karanja says, I'm learning a lot about childhood trauma. Thank you, Wanjiru. Your mom here watching and listening. Congratulations. Paul Miners, Taki Mapepe, good morning, Fixer. Wanjiru has prompted me to try and remember when I was at nursery school. Mostly we're taught to forget the bad experiences. Children who are neglected manifest so much. This is really good feedback. But the Kikombe talks about, because there must have been communal healing that existed.
Yes.
And I know people are trying to go back.
It goes into at what level? I mean, did the community, like you're saying, so there's trauma, yes, there's life experiences. At what point does it become an issue of concern? At what point is it life? Okay? Because then we'd go back into the community. At what point were they dealing with some of these issues with bringing you up or even addressing those traumas, maybe by the society, the fact that it was a very close-knit community. So neglect by one parent would not necessarily lead to neglect because everybody else would rally around this particular child. And there'd be a lot of force on making sure that, you know, children are not exposed to some of these things. If there's violence, it's discussed.
Yes.
People go and sit down and you discuss, you know, there's a lot of this kind of violence, this and the other. Maybe those were the things that we're dealing with. But did the society actually have issues with childhood trauma?
So, did you want me to go?
Yeah. And then that part, sorry, just before you answer, maybe with that part of the village, what he said about, okay, a neglectful parent there, but parenting was really the village's work. You know, so how does that then affect childhood trauma? It's a lot.
So, I was actually looking this up last night because it's always important for me to understand the culture that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm part of that culture. So one thing that people don't realize, there was post-colonialism and pre-colonialism in Africa as a context, right? So before we even get to childhood trauma, let's talk about what happened with colonialism itself, because it created a lot of generational issues for us, right? So before pre-colonialism, communities gathered together. It was a ritual for communities to gather, heal. Like I want to give a shout out to Shamiri Institute. I don't know if you know about them, but Tom, the CEO, is a good friend of mine, and they're doing work like that. We've had conversations because they're here in Kenya, and they're doing work to create healing in schools through the past healing rituals. One thing that I heard, even, it's just because they didn't use these terms. The thing is, and I'm always, trauma has existed since the inception of life because we all have issues. That's not unique to anyone. What it is, we had different language for it, right? If a child was experiencing something in the community, they're not going to call it trauma. They're probably going to be like, okay, let's go to the woods. And they used to do this, you know, the stones thing? I read, there's a community in Africa that used to do that. If you're experiencing passion or you were sad, there's certain rituals communities did. They just didn't call it, you know,
therapy.
Therapy. We're living in a different age now, so language is a difference. And then now we live in such a post-colonialism. It's very individualized. You know, the white man brought you religion. He brought you all these things that told you they're better, but really some of them are not. You know, and we could run down on that. So I think we need to understand trauma, quote unquote, has existed since the inception of man. It's not unique to anyone because trauma is life happening to you all the time. You know, it starts the minute you're born. So childhood trauma is just what you hold as a child. Because even in communities, if you're taught good things, they manifest you in adulthood. That's part of life, right?
Yeah.
The childhood trauma is just things that, it's not just neglect, it's things that are happening to you that not me even, like in the community. Maybe there was a marriage going on vibaya, pre-colonialism, but you don't know what that is. But when you get married, because, getting married at an early age that's okay for you. But now we're like, it's not okay,
You're a child bride.
Yeah. So there's so many things that we can integrate and talk about. I think my thing is we just need to understand that pre-colonialism, we used to work differently when it comes to mental wellness, because mental wellness, I think, has existed prior. Like when I'm called to churches to talk about mental health, I always just go to the book of Job, because I grew up knowing about it. If you look at Job, constantly stressed, upset with God, everything, and then he comes back to him. Half the time he's not even talking about God. He's pissed at him. He's like, why is this happening to me? If you want to go, Christian context, that is someone who went through a lot of emotions, stress, depression. He lost his family, he lost everything, but then he still found his way back up. So it's not a unique thing. I just think that the way we practice things, especially community was such a big thing. And I've grown up in a world where it's about you. So it's not about us here. And then you realize a community, because people used to check each other. If my dad doesn't check me, who's checking me? Janet's dad. Because there's that idea of respect that we have the same aligned values and morals. Nowadays we don't.
I think a lot of the other issues
For you to talk to my child.
Oh, by the way. We also try to sanitize bad experiences. And I've been grappling with trying to talk to my kids like, life isn't rainbows, by the way, without traumatizing them. I don't know. We'll see how it works out in 10 years. But
that's intentional. Okay, I'm not expert on anything, but I feel like intention is like half the game.
Right.
The fact that you're thinking through is already like half.
And that's the word.
Yeah, it has to, because you're not trying to sanitize the pain. If you're feeling bad, it's not here's a lollipop, feel better. It's talking through. But I was going to say, I think another measure of unhealed childhood trauma is how adults regulate themselves. So I think when Kikombe is saying it's everywhere, it's just a lot of unregulated human beings. Because
is there regulation?
Because you're projecting the constant.
But is there regulation, Janet?
No, but it has to self-regulate. That's what I mean.
Even that self-regulation, is there really?
You have to catch yourself if you're constantly hitting out, yelling, screaming, cussing. You're unregulated. So I think the problem is a lot of people run away from regulating themselves because it's hard work to have that meeting and be like, ukona shida.
I'll give you an example on regulation, if I can talk about it. A friend of mine who we grew up together, and she's maybe 2 years older than me, and she's a mom. And I'm at her house, and I think this is Christmas time, and she has, how old was Noel at that time? Maybe 3, 4. I could be badging on. And she bought all these parenting books because she didn't want, her child to have the same experiences. Let me use that word. So it's Christmas, and I think Noel wants something. She cries and cries and cries. And at this point, I know Louisa had said, I'm never going to hit my child, because I did a study at the Johns Hopkins with a doctor on why we're so quick to beat a child. And this was of the African-American community. What happens is when you want to hit your child immediately, is because you can't regulate. To first pause, because as a child,
Pause, Maria.
Pause.
Maria needs a minute to process.
Pause and regulate. This is why I'm saying this. Noelle is crying because she doesn't want anything. But at 3 years old, does Noelle know why she can't get ice cream in winter at night? She doesn't understand that. So Louisa stops her. So Louisa stops herself, and she tells her partner at the time, hey, can you take her for me? Let me go. I need a minute, because the crying, she's not understanding my no. So over time, Noel is now 6. I don't think she's ever hit Noel, but when you take your child, I'm going to say no. And she used to tell her, I'm saying no because it's winter, you're going to get a cold. She can still cry, right? Because she's a child. What happened to us as a kid, the minute you start crying, now you're hit more. Because why are you crying? Like for me, I used to hate hot milk. Like I used to loathe it. I used to hate what's that thing that forms on the milk? That, oh my God, I used to, and my parents believe, oh my God, this is just gonna make you a good kid in the morning. So I used to go pour it in the backyard, and the maid would catch me. So my mom never used to be the one to hit us. It was my dad. So my dad would come home, pass the belt. I'm like, I'm 4 years old. So to me, I'm like, I don't want this though. Yeah. So when we moved to the States when I was 5 or 6, I went to kindergarten, I think kindergarten or first grade. They give you cold milk. I was like, this is heaven.
You loved it.
Yeah, I loved it. I went home and I told Mom, from now on, all the milk in the world, as long as it's cold. Sometimes when you're a kid, as much as you think that a child is, the brain's formulating and it's formulating to make choices. Why do you have to tell your child to learn to say no? Because it's so important for them to create boundaries at an early age. Right. I knew that I never wanted hot milk, but because my parents are not taught to say, maybe she does really don't want milk, because what do they know? They don't know anything else. Yeah. But for me, if my child now, you know, when I'm blessed with children, if my child says, Mom, I don't think this, I'm not going to keep forcing it on them. So it's a lot of unlearning in parentification. And I know, Janet, I can tell.
Sorry, can we go back to the pause? You know where you left me. I've been following.
And regulate.
Yes.
It's like you're walking and you stop there. You're like, guys, come back.
What hit there for you?
No, when you said that the instinct to hit a child comes from your lack of self-regulation. Yes. Just go back to that bit because.
Okay, so let me. Anger is an emotion we all hold, right? Because what is happening? It's anger internally that this kid is not understanding what I'm saying. Because half the time they'll stop immediately when you whoop them or something like that. But the thing is, they're a child. They are a human being experiencing human emotions. So even if you hit me as a kid, it's in you chungu. Like it's part of the human process. We deny children to feel the human process. So that's why you have to pause. If you're gonna whoop a child, fine. But don't
think through the decision.
Think through. Is this a whooping situation? I mean, I'm not a fan of whooping because I've done the studies for it and why make the Black community. We have so much anger post-colonization, post-slavery and things like that because it's the only response. Anger is like, it's quick. Now, why it may be, I can't speak for our ancestors because it was a different time, but we also live in a different time now. Sometimes, kunichapia kiboko, and then just tell me not to do it. The thing we don't do is the minute we do that kibokoing, I don't know what I did wrong. You would be left wondering.
You don't understand it.
You don't understand it. So if you, and another thing that we do, if a child is this tiny, the best way psychologists say is to get to a child's level. You bend to their level and have a conversation because we don't treat kids as because name toto, but we have to unlearn that thinking, and that's why I said pause. Sometimes you don't need to hit the child. You can just tell them this is why. This is because also a child needs to tell you their why. Let them validate them, but you still can say no. Like my friend who I'm mentioning, she says no all the time to her child. But Noelle is now 6. What has happened to Noelle? She understands when mommy says no, it's for her betterment. And there's a reason. And mommy actually tells her the reason. She doesn't dismiss her.
And they explain each other themselves to each other. I like the way we are threading this conversation and the definitions of trauma and the understanding that, yes, everybody has gone through some form of trauma. It's experiences in life at a younger age, at 0 to 5, at 5 to 10, at 10 to 15, all the way. But then there's the other side of the danger, that the awareness now about childhood trauma, the romanticization of childhood trauma, could have the danger of, everything, you are dealing with your childhood traumas, dismissing people. And the other one is self-awareness of your childhood traumas, or thinking that you're self-aware of your childhood traumas, and then you start moving to the other side of overcompensation. So you're overcompensating with your children. You know what? I went through this, so I don't want to do this. You love bomb your child, so because I don't want them to ever feel that they didn't get love. You love bomb them, become excess. Right. You don't correct them because let's have a conversation, and let me allow you to do the thing. That
gentle parenting.
And so. What are the dangers of that other extreme?
Like overcorrection.
I love that question. We all know that the whole quote, too much of something is poisonous. And people don't understand everything that we do has a reactive thing in a good or bad way. What I want to say in regards to overcompensation is also learning boundaries. Boundaries is a huge word that we don't use. Just because I didn't receive this kind of love and I'm going to give it to you, there needs to be boundaries, not only with myself, but with the child, which is why I use the example. She can hear Noel all she wants. See, Noel has been had. But also there is no Noel. It's not going to happen. Because as a parent, she understands, I have given my child the space to have a voice, but I'm still the parent. Despite me trying to create a friendship, I'm still the parent who will create boundaries. Now, how do we get to boundaries? Because that's the biggest one, right?
Yes.
It goes back to what you said earlier, Janet, about self-reflecting in a way that's healthy. The problem, and I've had even people saying, well, because I've had childhood trauma, you know, I'm not going to change, or I'm going to now do, you know, justifying their behavior. And that's not why you're learning.
It's a get out of jail free card
it's
now.
not, yeah, and I really, really do not like that, because then you're saying, because I have this habit, it's not for me to change. It's just for me to...
It's for you to understand.
It's for me to understand me. And that's a very selfish way of thinking. Why? If the four of us sit here and say, well, my childhood trauma is justified and this is why I act the way I act, so I'm not going to change. And the little that I'll change, it'll be for my benefit. We have relational relationships, right? There's relationships. Relationships with your parents, your siblings, your coworkers. How you are as an individual affects all of that. That's why the adulthood now comes in. If I find out something about my inner child, and you know, let's say one of you says, well, Shiro, I don't like that you're impatient in certain ways. And then I go, well, it's because of my childhood trauma. What have I done there? First of all, I've dismissed the fact that you're trying to correct me. Secondly, I've justified something. Yes, it may have something to do with how I am, but that doesn't mean I don't need to work on it.
Doesn't mean that you're right.
Is there like a cutoff age for sasa when mtu mzima take responsibility for this? You know,
No, so
Your actual age.
I don't even believe in that, because look at Trump, okay? Okay, please, let's not use age as a huge emotional maturity is actually a choice. There's no cut-off age. Emotional maturity is, and now the problem with maturity, we use it as if you're 25, you're mature. You're not.
No. Okay. When does the
thing
brain
is,
stops
you could be 25. You could be 25, but the thing is, there's something called neuroplasticity. Do you know what that is?
I'm guessing it's how the brain expands or shrinks, and I don't know if it shrinks, but I hope
so every day you take a 30-minute walk, your brain expands. You read a book, your brain expands. That's why if you have Apple devices, they tell you to read for what? 30 minutes a day. Because your brain expands. Your brain may stop growing, but it has neuroplasticity. It's like, that's what I'm saying. I'm 33 now. If I decided to change a certain habit, I can change it in 21 days. Because what? When you have a conversation with the brain and yourself, and you're like, I'm going to commit to this, you know, and I always tell people, take a walk, read a book, do things for nature. One thing Ian and I do, because you guys know Ian, when we have fights, we take walks. Because we realize...
Separately?
No, together. No, together. Like after we calm down.
In 5 minutes, in 30 minutes.
Like after we cool off.
Silently.
Go search for Fixing the Nation, Ian Mutiso, Wakili. You'll see he's a great Wakili. But go on.
So what happens is, we take a walk and we talk about the issue, and you realize it's so much different when you're inside the house, because there's, you know, you're letting the other person speak. There's something about, you know, a human being with nature.
That's why they say grounding yourself. I want to chime in what Kikombe, I think, is saying. He's saying reading The Courage to be Disliked. The professor argues
good book.
That if you hit a child, it's because you wanted to do it, not because the mistake was done by the child.
Exactly what I'm saying. It's an inner response, and we also have to recognize it was generationally passed. It wasn't, you know, no. Like, I have friends who are doing what probably my other friend did, but I have friends who are like, nah, I'm hitting. And it's because for them, that's the easiest way to parent. But also, I think my fear in that is sometimes is that you never know, you never learn. Because if I hit you and I don't even try and tell you, and also what's worse, you're hitting me after I'm crying. Like, Sumesha niambia, it's wrong, and I've stopped, but because you're upset that I'm crying, there's something about... let me give you this picture. I lost my grandmother a month ago. I'm sorry if I get emotional. We're really close. And when she died at the gravesite, because I was crying a lot because I was handling funeral arrangements. So I think it hit me at the funeral. Everyone is telling me, be strong. I think one of my pals came and said, no, don't tell her to do that. So they're telling me not to cry. And all of us, basically, my cousins and I think we're crying. And so I do write. I write oftentimes. And I wrote an article about it the other night because I realized people's uncomfortability is a projection, right? So if I'm crying, because we've been so conditioned that crying is a bad thing, you are so uncomfortable with the idea that I'm grieving that you're like, no, be quiet. And that is why we also go back to it. If I correct a child and they're still crying because that thing was denied, they're a kid, they don't know any better. You know, it's different if a 20-year-old umwambie no nanze kulia. It's a very different thing. But when you condition a child that when I hit you and you cry, it's a crime. Like crime, I mean slightly. It was just not okay to cry when you were beaten. So in that, yeah, I'll hit you. And so we are so uncomfortable with the idea of vulnerability, even when we're denied something. Like how many times all of us here have applied for jobs, multiple, and you're told no. No one knows if you cried in your pillow at night because you can't do it, maybe even with your friends, because you're so embarrassed that you're crying. But that's a human response, right? So even for me, while I'm grieving my shosho, I was so tired of people telling me to be strong because I'm like, my strength lies in my vulnerability. Me crying is me being strong because I can't hold it in. You see people who hold on to grief for years, then they die by suicide. You see people who capture onto grief for years and they don't feel it. They start having other manifestation of other habits. So even in adulthood, all that stuff that we were told to hold in, you know, because it's not just emotional neglect, as I said. When you're told to suppress your feelings, it's a very dangerous thing for the brain because the brain is like, okay, you've told me to do this. Well, let me go out and do other things. That's what the brain does.
I want to go on a slightly different tangent from a question that was asked, and it's about death actually, because you've talked about losing your grandmother and Pole Sana. Dan Cyber Cafe was asking, I would like to shed light into the perspective around death. We now know that the brain never forgets. Children are mostly termed as too young and minimal care is done to them in instances of death. They may be young to understand, but the experience stays with them, which is the foundation of most trauma. How we handle grief with children. How should we, so that it doesn't manifest later? Because I think Dan is right. A lot of times it's like, oh, it's not affecting them that much. Or I don't know if there's really intentionality. I don't think we think children understand death and grief the way we do.
I think one of the things also is, you know, the child doesn't know. I thought I understood grief until I lost my grandmother. And I think for even the younger, so my cousin's children, my grandmother had 26 grandchildren and 41 great-grandchildren. So the ones who are small, they understand they've lost something, but they can't really process what has happened. They just know Shosho is no longer there, and they cried. So one of the conversations my cousins were having is telling the kids, anytime you feel to talk about, you know, Maito, come and talk to us about it so we can process together. Because a child, as long as, so there's one thing about the brain that I haven't mentioned. Talking is therapy to the brain. Not a therapy session. Like this is right here, we can call it the healing, fixing nation, edit. Healing, talking is a way for the brain to release. So if your children come talk to you about, hey mom, I'm feeling this way about a certain situation, even death, listen to them, name the emotion. One of the greatest things we can do is not be silent, is not tell the child, or even think that because they are a child and they can't process, their brains are processing for them. Go ahead.
We have a minute to time. I wanted you to speak to how somebody can begin to have that uncomfortable conversation. Right now, there's somebody listening or watching saying it's hard to confront whatever trauma is traumatizing you and projecting. Where is a good place to start? For somebody who's listening, whether it's healing childhood trauma, understanding why they're projecting, especially men, only because of how they've been socialized. Where would you say is a good place to start? Beyond therapy, some people can't access it. What is a good first step?
I think the first step is to have I heard my mom say it, I think, have a conversation with self. And that's going to be really hard. Think about the times that someone has tried to tell you, hey, you do this thing and it's annoying. Because we're very good at dismissing, it's never that serious. But think about the times someone has told you, this is something that you do that affects me, that hurts me. And think about also other things people do that hurt you. Why? Because sometimes Latif could say something to the both of you, and Latif didn't mean it in a bad way.
Yeah.
But then it offends you and Janet, right? He needs you, the both of you have to figure out, why did it hurt me? Because how we perceive things and take things are completely differently, different to how someone intended. So we need to self-reflect how we communicate and how other people communicate with us. And actions, what people do. Also reflect on how you grew up. How did you feel in your childhood? And this is also, I push people to have these general conversations with their friends. My husband likes to say, you just like intellectual conversations. I do most of the times because I feel like it's a way to grow. So just pushing yourself to
yourself.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have to end there. Hey, this one needed 2 hours workshopping.
Yeah.
Wanjiru Karanja-Mutiso, founder of Clear Minds, Better Lives, has been talking to us about childhood trauma. Today is World Mental Health Day. And thank you for being with us. In the next hour, we commemorate International Day of the Girl, which is tomorrow. The first one was commemorated in 2012, 2025. So several years later, what really has changed? How's the conversation evolved? Monica Mweruri will join us coming up to 8 a.m. We'll be back in a moment.